All right, welcome back to the
you're
Juju
recording.
Podcast. I'm your host. All right, welcome back to the Juju Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Hall. You can find me on the tweets at Juju Crazy. Daniel Palmer is on some end of some line up in Philadelphia. Palmer, what's going on?
What's up, man? Not a whole lot. Ready for football to start. This preseason stuff, it's good to gamble on. It's not healthy to gamble on, but I need real football now.
I feel that. Also joining us, Jason Smith. You can find him on Twitter at JasonIsASmith. Jason, what you up to, man?
Not a whole heck of a lot. I'm 3 cups of coffee in, feeling good, ready to talk some actual football, as Palmer was saying, and talk about college football. And so everybody knows, I will not be writing about soccer for a while. We got one more soccer post, and then after that, I'm actually going to start writing about American sports.
Whoa, brutal.
Look out.
Also joining me from his own living room, which I'm also in, Chad Floyd. Find him on the tweets, Chad_Floyd. Chad, what's up?
Not too much. Had a little technology issue a few minutes ago. You texted me to say, hey, I'm coming to your house, which I had no idea about. And here we are. We are now drinking bourbon, and we're going to talk about some Georgia football.
That's right. We're going to talk about Georgia football, which is fitting because, as you've probably seen on our website, dudecrazy.net, we have a brand new sponsor, the UGA Vault. You can download the UGA Vault on the App Store. It's got a collection of the greatest highlights in Georgia football history, so you can go there, download it. It's absolutely free. I was actually what do they call it when you go in early, an early converter, early adopter, something like that? A sucker. I paid $9.99 for that thing. And here's the thing, though. I don't regret paying $9.99 for it, but I do wish I'd gotten it for free. So it's worth $10. You can have it for $0. Go to dudecrazy.net. You can actually click a link that'll take you straight to download it, and you can watch all your favorite Georgia legends right on your phone. So check out the UGA Vault. Without further ado, let's jump in and let's talk a little bit about Georgia football. For those who've been listening to all our team previews, things like that, we're going to continue doing those, but we want to take a little bit of time out of our schedule to talk about kind of our topic of choice. So first things up, and I'm going to come to you with this, Palmer. Georgia's had a lot go on this offseason. Obviously, you had an entire defensive coaching staff leave, a new staff arrive, a pretty good signing day, a ton of players dismissed, it seems like. Maybe 1,000, as Ashley said earlier. We've had a lot of folks dismissed from the team. How would you grade this offseason?
I got to grade it as a A- with room to grow. I think that a lot of those people who want, if you're asking to leave a program, there's a reason, and you clearly don't want to be there. And what's worse than having players leave is having disgruntled players stay. So I'm pretty one of those people who's addition by subtraction at that point. As far as the coaching staff, I didn't hate Todd Grantham as much as a lot of people did. I thought that he mismanaged personnel last year with his young secondary and didn't utilize the front seven in a more effective way. I think Pruitt's zone blitzing schemes and the way he coaches up his DBs is going to be very helpful here. I think we won. Maybe there's some loss as far as talent personnel-wise, but I think schematically and as far as the future of the school and the future of the Georgia football as a whole, I think it's a positive and we're moving in the right direction.
Jason, would you agree with that the positives are outweighing the negatives for this offseason, and how would you kind of evaluate it?
Yeah, I definitely think the positives are outweighing the negatives. I feel like the addition of Jeremy Pruitt and his ability to coach up younger players is going to far outweigh the loss of Shaq Wiggins and Trey Matthews. I think that along with Palmer, I think I was a little more negative on Todd Grantham, so I see the move as a much higher upgrade probably than Palmer does. But as far as just evaluating signing day and whatnot, I think that the added depth at the running back position is going to be so crucial this year, and so I feel really good. I feel really good in that regard. Of giving this an A- with room to grow, because I think having those people to back up Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall is going to take off some of the wear and tear, and that keeps the running attack way more solid for the entirety of the year, to where we're not worried about an ankle or a knee or something else towards the end of the year.
Chad, I want to go to you real quick. Thinking back, take yourself back to immediately following the Gator Bowl, the TaxSlayer.com Gator Bowl, loss to Nebraska on January 1st. Do you feel better about Georgia's 2014 season now than you did back on January 1st?
A little bit. I mean, I'm a Pruitt believer. I've wrote multiple articles kind of studying his defense, and the thing about his defense compared to Grantham's, where it's very static in the personnel, is, last year with Florida State, he could find ways to fit players into his schemes and adjusted the schemes to fit the players. With as many losses in the secondary as we've had this offseason, I think that's going to bode very well for, the Georgia defense is going to play as well as it possibly can given the personnel, I think, this season. So, yeah, I feel pretty good just replacing Grantham with Pruitt and, Hudson Mason. I thought he wasn't terrible in the TaxSlayer.com Gator Bowl, but there's room for improvement there. But he's the guy now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that offense, and we'll talk about the offense for a little bit before moving back to Pruitt and the defense, but looking at the offense, you have Hudson Mason, who is a fifth-year senior. Obviously, everybody knows the weapons. In a lot of ways, it's like Georgia's returning 150% of their production, assuming they get some of these guys back. We're not sure the timetable on Malcolm Mitchell. He continues to injure his knees in some capacity. Justin Scott Wesley, by all accounts, is looking strong while running routes, but hadn't gone into contact drills yet. But you're going to get those guys back, going to get Keith Marshall back. This should be a good offense. Daniel Palmer, I want to go to you for a second because you have played within this position group. But how difficult will it be for Georgia to replace a few guards on the offensive line? I mean, you're going to return your centerpiece in both tackles. And from what it sounds like, Watts Dantzler is actually pushing Colton Houston for that right tackle spot. But how difficult will it be to get a couple of guards plugged in there because that's still relatively open and kind of develop cohesion?
First and foremost, I want to go ahead and state that I want Watts Dantzler to beat out Colton Houston. I think he's a better football player. Secondly, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we develop as an offensive line because, like you said, a lot of it depends on consistency, depends on the ability to keep your front five together. But this is a Georgia football offensive line that has had a penchant for subbing in a lot. I hope that we can get away from that a little bit this year. All that's going to, like you said, is going to depend on the amount of faith that the coaches come out of camp with of the interior three being the centers and the guards. I think that our blocking scheme isn't one that's particularly taxing on guards. It becomes a little bit they get a lot of help in the pass game and they get a lot of help as far as our zone read stuff. What's going to be interesting to see is if these tackles can really hold up on the end, because I think that's where we broke down a lot last year on the quick pressures. I have more questions about the guys coming back on the outside, honestly, than the guys who are going to be shoring up the end.
Speaking of guys coming back, Chad, just about everybody's coming back at wide receiver. At tight end, we're looking for Jay Rome to kind of step up and be the guy folks expected when he signed way back in 2011. But who are some less obvious choices to have breakout years in the passing game that aren't quarterbacks?
That are not quarterbacks.
So don't count Mason.
I mean, obviously you've got 3 or 4 guys in Bennett, Conley, Mitchell, and Scott Wesley that are, if healthy, going to take all the snaps. Rome at tight end, same thing. I'm watching for the freshman Jeb Blazevich at the tight end position to maybe make an impact. I mean, he's a guy. I want to say he was in for the spring, but 6'6", 250, big old, very much in the mold of an Arthur Lynch. Could be a safety valve option, but I really think the running backs are going to play a big role in the passing game this year, just like last year. I mean, Gurley was maybe 6th on the team in receptions. I can see them getting the ball to Keith Marshall. I see both of the freshmen getting a lot of looks. I don't know. I think if you're going to go with a less obvious choice, pretty much whoever's in the backfield next to Hudson Mason is going to be the most illogical choice, if you will.
There we go.
By the way you phrased that question.
And Jason Smith, speaking of running backs, obviously Georgia's got a pretty good one in Todd Gurley. I want to play a little game called How Many Beers? In other words, how drunk would I have to get you to convince you that Todd Gurley is not the best running back in the SEC?
I think we overvalue this a little bit of you would have to get me on the floor drunk. I don't think you'd have to do that. I think that I would have to be drunk, but I'm not that far away from saying that TJ Yeldon on any given day is about equal to Todd Gurley. And I don't know if it's because Alabama has never had sort of the inconsistencies we've had on our offensive line, but I think TJ Yeldon can be just as dominant if it wasn't for the fact that he gets subbed in every other play for a different running back that Alabama has in the stable. I don't think that I think that the Todd Gurley is still clearly superior to TJ Yeldon or anybody else that Alabama has, but I don't think that the gap is nearly as far as we Georgia fans like to think it is. But obviously, you still have to get me pretty drunk to think anything other than Todd Gurley is the best running back in college football.
Daniel Palmer, how about you, man? How much is it going to take for you to buy somebody else as the best running back? And kind of as Jason alluded to, is it somewhat presumptive to kind of work on that assumption to begin with?
First and foremost, it'd take a billion beers because beer doesn't really work to get me drunk. Let's talk about whiskeys. I'd have to say it would take me a solid 8 to 9 whiskeys to even entertain the conversation, if only because I think there's been a lot of talk about all the talent Georgia brought into the running back and all the one we're getting back injury-wise. As long as the offensive line holds up, I don't think Gurley's carries are going down. I don't think Gurley comes back with the fervor, and he has something to prove after last year. Not to us, but to himself. It was an injury-riddled season. His carries limited not because they were trying to keep him fresh for some magical, mystical game that was never going to happen. They were trying to keep him upright because he was still playing hurt. I think he's going to come back and demand that rock, especially when you have an unproven guy under center. I think the engine that's going to power this Georgia offense is Todd Gurley, and if anything, we're going to become more convinced over his dominance in the SEC over the course of the season.
Chad, any thoughts on just how good Gurley's season could be?
If he stays healthy, the sky's the limit. For the record, give me about 4 or 5 beers, and I'm entertaining the notion of Mike Davis being the best running back in the SEC because he can stay healthy.
So either Chad likes Mike Davis or he's a lightweight. We'll find out during this season, I guess. Let's talk about this defense, and let's talk about Jeremy Pruitt. One of the things that Pruitt brought immediately was open competition, something that the players really bemoaned Todd Grantham for not allowing. I mean, it seemed like he kind of played favorites a little more than they wanted. Pruitt came in from day one and said, hey, even if you're a 3-year starter, you're not safe. Nobody's safe. One of the guys who's kind of fallen victim a little bit to that, at least at this juncture, is Ray Drew, a guy who, played really well last year. At one point had 6 sacks over the course of 3 games in SEC play. And now in the spring, he was resigned to third team. He's kind of battling with the second team right now. Daniel Palmer, Ray Drew, I got to feel like he's going to start at some point this season, probably day one. What are your thoughts?
I don't think he's a starter for us, if only because Ray Drew is good in the pass rush. He's good in space in the pass rush and a one-on-one pass rush. He's good around the edge. The problem becomes everything else he does on the football field. If a guy takes a hard outside edge, he doesn't have great inside work on tackles. He doesn't do a good job. His feet, historically, maybe things have changed in the last he's been coached up, but historically his feet stop when he gets met with that double team when he comes inside. And I know a lot of people say, it's a double team. Of course you're going to stop. The point of playing a double team is you want to compress the pocket around a quarterback. You want to get those big guys who are blocking you, you want to try to drive them into his lap. You're not going to get the sack, but you can't give up on the play. Also, he doesn't hold his water the best against the run game, which is something that we saw on all those option runs early in the season before they started realizing that, Marlo Herrera can't play the pass either. He can't play the pass, he just plays the run, and he stopped being able to help out our defensive ends as much. I know that Ray Drew is someone who was touted as one of those big guys coming in. I'm not saying his career's over in Georgia. I just think that it's been a prudent move away from him as far as, and if we can establish him as a pass rush specialist, a third down guy, a long yardage guy, obvious passing situations, then I think that's more of a place for him to have an impact on this team.
Chad, I want to talk about one of the guys that Palmer just mentioned, and then I'm going to hit Jason with this same question. But talking about the linebackers, I mean, Georgia's about as talented as anybody across at least the front four. We don't know a whole lot about their depth yet, but if you're building a linebacking unit around one of these two guys, and that's Marlo Herrera and Ramik Wilson, which one are you building around, Chad?
That's something. I like what Herrera brings in run support. He's very much a good anchor. He's, keeps guys as calm, cool, and collected as anybody possibly can. I really think Ramik Wilson was probably the beneficiary of having a guy like Herrera around last year, where Herrera's eating blocks and Ramik Wilson's getting tackles. So I've got to go with Herrera there.
Jason Smith, how about you? Any preference there as far as, would you take Wilson's versatility over Herrera's, kind of concentrated sense of capability?
I think I'm kind of with Chad in that I like Herrera's ability to sort of do what I would compare to the Quentin Moses effect, because a while back Quentin Moses was the thing on the Georgia defensive line. And then he had a down year in his senior season, but a guy named Charles Johnson had an incredible year and went on to be an all-pro player for the Panthers, obviously. I like building off of that, of a guy who's really solid, who won't get all the glory, but you'll have players like Ramik Wilson and the guy we haven't mentioned yet, my own fellow Dodge County alum, Leonard Floyd, reap all the benefits. And so I like the solidity, of him not necessarily being the star, but doing a lot of great things that shoots the glory towards other people, especially in seeing my guy Leonard Floyd become a star, which I like.
I had a similar conversation, based on your Moses and Johnson point, with Gerald Gamble recently, and he said something very similar. He would kind of eat the blocks, and Rennie Curran would end up with the tackles. He became the All-SEC player. Gerald Gamble ended up in the NFL. So, I mean, I think that's kind of been a trend at Georgia for whatever reason.
Palmer, I know you're a fan of Marlo Herrera as much as anybody. If you could ship him back to 1985, one thing he said is he's talked about improving in pass coverage. I mean, do you think how realistic is that to happen over the course of basically a summer and a change in coordinator?
It's funny because Mike Felder of Bleacher Report and I were emailing back and forth this week about those quotes. He and I are both huge fans of Herrera as, like you said, a 1985 linebacker. When teams were run first, he's your perfect backer. But right now, I feel like from what I've seen of him, he's not an every down back. You have to take him off the field in passing situations, which is interesting because he's probably your best pure linebacker. He's just not very good in coverage, and his man coverage is abysmal. As far as the coaching of 1 year, this is where you're going to see how much Pruitt really changed. We're going to see how much of an effect he has on these players, because if there's one guy who can be molded because he wants to be coached, he's got the athletic ability to do the things that we need him to do. It's just about getting coached, getting in the right positions, getting comfortable to do it. I think that's going to be the real litmus test for Pruitt, is how often Herrera's on the field in passing downs, which would speak to the trust he's earned and how he does in those passing situations. If it's a Clemson game where we see him in the first half take all the 3-down snaps, then hey, maybe he's made a step. But if he's blowing coverages in those 3-down snaps, then maybe it's just not in his skill set as a player to do these things, and we have to adjust around that.
Yeah, and I think that'll be kind of a developing storyline for this defense for not just Herrera but everybody. I mean, I think using the example of Marlo, you kind of had last year where obviously he had some shortcomings, but they were exacerbated by the fact that you had defensive backs who were continually kind of out of place, didn't quite know where to be, and so then all of a sudden the middle of the field, which should be a somewhat understandable assignment, looked even worse with Herrera there because all of a sudden that middle of the field was huge. So I think we're going to start seeing, hopefully, Pruitt kind of develop some of these young defensive backs. There's still a surprising amount of talent in that secondary when you consider the guys who have moved over, guys like J.J. Green, for instance, playing there. Damian Swan has, at least from a leadership standpoint, really taken ownership of his starting spot, but everything else is completely up in the air. Chad, is there anybody that you would like to see in the secondary outside of Swan?
This guy, Chattel Fencing, Shadow Fencing.
I'll take a Shadow.
He's very much, I think I wrote about this at one point, he's very much a Grantham-style safety, kind of the big, rangy Bakari Rambo type. He'd be perfect for, what we would call the star position in a 4-2-5 or 3-3-5 set, basically. And, 6'2", 205. I don't know anything else about him, but, I don't know much about any of these guys in the secondary except watching Corey Moore and Quincy Mauger get beat over the top over and over and over again. So anything new is nice. So Chattel Fencing, holler at your boy. Make plays.
Jason, anybody or anything in particular you're looking for out of the secondary? Because I think one thing that people are really quick to talk about is, hey, Pruitt, new defensive coordinator, but the guy's a damn good defensive backs coach, and we've seen what he's been able to do with elite talent, and he's going to have good talent. So anything in particular you're looking forward to seeing?
I'm looking to see what Sheldon Dawson does. Is like a veteran who, his only claim to fame basically is either not covering well or poking D. Milner in the eye. I want to see if he can step. I want to see if he can step up this year. I mean, he's a junior. He's one of the few people that are actually above that don't have. He's one of the only guys in our secondary that doesn't include redshirt or freshman and sophomore in his name. You're a veteran. You've been in the system for a while. You got to step up and show me something. And obviously, Pruitt says anybody who wins out is going to play. But if nothing else, you got to be the leader of the rotational squad at this point. But I'm looking at Sheldon Dawson saying, what are you going to do this year? Because this is a year where you need to show up.
Palmer, how about you? What are you looking for in the secondary besides coverage?
besides a little help back there. I think that, like you said, this has been a really understated part of the Pruitt hire. Is not only is he going to help maximize our front seven, but he's going to shore up that back end. We've seen flashes of Damian Swan over the past couple years. You were on this podcast a year ago on the Megapod touting the Swan, the Swan dive, the Swan song, and it didn't turn out so well for you as far as that pick goes. But
the Swan dive didn't become a thing until Clemson, by the way, when he decided to just start falling down in front of Sammy Watkins because he thought that would work. I mean, really,
was that the third play of the season?
He was playing booby trap defense. Like, if I lay down, he won't see. I got him.
Well, that touchdown Sammy Watkins had was more bear trap. Like, his ankle just collapsed.
He was defending the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. He won't see you if you don't move.
Clever girl. No, but I really think that Damian Swan's a player who has the talent but hasn't gotten the coaching in the last couple of years. And I know that he's hungry, a senior, your last go-around. He's probably coming to camp fired up and ready to show some things. And as long as he's able to not only to balance the responsibilities of learning from Pruitt and leading this group, which I think he can. Guy seems to be a pretty high-character guy from the limited exposure we've had to him. But I think as long as he can balance taking what he learns in the classroom from Pruitt to leading on the field, I think it should be a strong season out of him. I'm looking for him to finally evolve into the lockdown corner we thought he could have been last year.
Absolutely. And then we've talked a little bit about offense and a little bit about defense, and that leaves obviously the most important phase of the game, special teams. We're not going to go too in-depth on what Georgia can do better on special teams because we don't have that much time, but I just want to name from each of you guys, and I'm going to start with you, Jason. Who do you want to see returning kicks, punts, whatever? Just who's your return guy? Who do you want to see?
My guy's Reggie Davis. I want to see him and his incredible speed get loose in the middle of the field, or like what it's in reality, what it's becoming is I want a guy back there I know is not going to drop the ball and who can take a knee without kneeling on the 1 yard line. That's what I want. I think Reggie Davis is a sophomore. He understands this, and I don't want Keith Marshall anywhere near any contact. So Reggie Davis is my guy.
Too bad we can't bring Logan Gray back. Daniel Palmer, who you want?
I think it depends on what your position is on the running game. If we're not going to redshirt those young kids, toss them back there, man. Like, I know you've got to gain the trust of the coaching staff, but if these guys are as good as everyone says they are, this is the kind of the first step they can take into cracking those starting lineups on Saturdays is getting exposure on those kind of punt units and showing what they can do in the open field. I guarantee if a Sony Mitchell catches one and he doesn't necessarily have to go to the house, but he can crease it and get some yardage and create some things for himself behind the blocking coached up by this UGA special teams coach, then I think that he can really make a statement for himself and really kind of change the game and affect it positively from that position.
Chad, how about you? Who's your man back there?
Chief Keith. Let's go. He runs a 4.3. He's awesome in the open field. We've never seen him in the open field because, for some reason when he gets in the ball game, he runs between the tackles. Well, oh, come on. That's
no, two years ago, Tennessee, we saw Keith Marshall in open field, and no one could touch him.
I know. We've had 16 guys return kicks or punts in the past 2 years not named Keith Marshall, and we've been one of the worst teams in college football at returning kicks and punts in those 2 years. Put the dude back there. Let him use that 4.3 speed. Make plays. I mean, we got 5 running backs. You should use a running back back there.
Yeah, I think I agree. Honestly, I'd like to see any of these guys if we're giving them an actual honest chance to actually return something. The last thing I want to see is a white wide receiver fair catching. I'm just going to go on the record with that. I don't want to see a single white wide receiver fair catching punts. I'd love to see this kid, Isaiah McKenzie, get a shot, if for no other reason than the vets are raving about how elusive he is, and they're basically saying, put this guy in on special teams. He's a small guy. He's like 5'8", 165. Super elusive. His nickname is the human joystick, and that's so cheesy, and I didn't come up with it, that it's got to be somewhat accurate. So I just want to see him back there, and I feel like if there's one position where you just listen to a vet saying this guy can make plays, it might be at the kick returning spot. And, yeah, I certainly agree with Jason's sentiment that you don't want to just have a guy back there bobbling the ball, but give him some rules, train him up, actually coach him, God forbid, and see what he can do. We're going to talk a lot more Georgia football in future podcasts. We're going to do a full podcast on offense, full on defense, and we're going to do a full on the schedule going week by week. It'll probably be all 4 of us back. So this is just kind of a quick refresher. Hopefully it's a good primer. Keep checking out our stuff on doodocrazy.net. Daniel Palmer, what you got this week? Anything?
We're going back with more of the look at Hard Knocks, which is becoming harder and harder for me to watch, as I've seen players get hurt already because Steven Jackson got hurt in the opening credits. We'll also be back with look at more dogs in the NFL, and there won't be any gambling lines this week, but we'll be more on the podcast.
Awesome. Jason Smith, what you got going, man?
We'll be coming back to the O'Bannon case a good bit. I'm going to do a little bit of a history piece. I'm working up a crazy theory that amateurism has never actually existed in the world, or at least in America. And then we're also going to have a soccer piece on picking a Premier League team from a SEC football fan's perspective that is dropping tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that if you're listening to this podcast before then, which I don't know how you are, but just in case. And then probably
if you're listening, it dropped this morning.
Yes. And then we're probably coming back. I'm going to have a piece that I'll tease real quick that I don't really know where it's going, but I'm going to write something about Larry Munson pretty soon. And it's going to, hopefully it will be as awesome as he was, but I don't know if I can live up to that.
You can't. That's the spoiler alert for listeners, but I will say, based on our conversations and our emails, it's going to be a really, really awesome piece. It's going to be as good as words could be that weren't Munson's words, if that makes any sense.
I appreciate the faith.
We're going to work closely with the Vault, the UGA Vault. Again, download the app, and they're going to hook us up with some exclusive footage that you can't find anywhere else, not on YouTube, nothing like that. So unless you can time travel, this is going to be the only place you can see it on doodocrazy.net, thanks to the UGA Vault. So definitely check that out. That's going to be a really fun piece. I'm excited about it. Chad, what you got going, man?
I mean, I've hit everything Georgia football ad nauseum, I feel like. I'm looking at Phil Steele's page on him right now and can't figure out what else to write about. So as far as I know, we've got the College Football Hall of Fame lock-in this Wednesday, and that's just going to be a problem.
Yeah, so for those who missed it, I wrote a really sarcastic essay in a Chick-fil-A contest sponsored by Chick-fil-A with conjunction of the College Football Hall of Fame, and basically they're letting people in, like 100 people in early, and we're going to spend the night. And I wrote a essay basically praising the NCAA and college football for its advancement of secondary and higher education, which is kind of what we think of when we think college football here. So I wrote that piece. It was 133 words. I called it an essay, and I won. So me, and I can bring a guest, and literally couldn't find anyone other than Chad, so Chad's going. Chad and I are going to spend the night in the College Football Hall of Fame. So in all seriousness, follow along Wednesday night. It's going to be night at the museum, full-fledged. We're going to wear matching pajamas. He doesn't know that yet, but we're going to do it. We're going to live tweet. They've encouraged us to tweet things, which I don't think they really counted on us having like 30,000 some odd followers and coming in with like 110% snark and maybe a BAC over 0.2. We'll find out. But it should be a good time. It's going to be great fun. So check that out. Follow us on Twitter at DudeCrazy. Daniel Palmer is at DPalm66. Jason Smith at JasonIsASmith. Chad Floyd at Chad_Floyd. Guys, thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah.